Hello everyone and welcome back. We are already on hoop 7 of the Prim stitch along. My name is Jennifer Long. I am the machine embroidery manager at Riley Blake Designs, and together we have been stitching along all of the hoops of the Prim quilt stitch along. Now if you're just joining us, this stitch along is happening on the YouTube channel, in our Facebook group RBD M.E machine embroidery, and on our blog as well. We are also stitching every block together, and we are already on block 7, which is the church block. You can choose to stitch one or all of these blocks and follow along for tips and tricks and how to use our RBD patterns, instructions, and the USB. The fun thing about this stitch along is that it is available in multiple sizes, all on that same USB. So you can use the 6x10, 8x12, or 9x14 stitchable areas to stitch 1, 2, or 3 of these blocks and use them how you wish. We are stitching this out in RBD Be in My Bonnet Basics, but you can also stitch it out in the Prim collection or swap out any of the fabrics in however you choose. In our Riley Blake machine embroidery instructions and cutting instructions, we have everything allocated by fabric letter label, so it's easy to swap out. If you want to go see how we did all the cutting for this, go back and check out the very first video in this series, which is ready, set for Prim stitch along. All right, so let's get started, shall we? We are stitching the church block hoop 7. I am stitching the 6x10 stitchable area, but just make sure that you have the stitchable area that you are stitching. You're going to check on your machine that you've loaded up the right file, hoop 7 church, and the right size that will fit into your hoop before you begin. Next, you can gather up all of the fabrics that you're going to need for this block. I have the 3 here that we're going to need. I also have the church letter label here, the block label, which I used when I cut out my fabrics, but I'm going to use it at the end as well. I also have all my threads in order. One fell. I have all my threads in order here of how they appear through this pattern. So what I just did is I went through the instructions and found my first thread, which is thread 8. I actually have it threaded already on my machine. And then I just kind of went along like this and followed along and just made sure I had them all already pulled and in order. I just like to have them at my fingertips so it's ready to go and I can just really enjoy and focus on the stitching. I also have other supplies that I'm going to need here. I have my trim it ruler over there. I have my iron, my Jill Lily pressing pad, and a few other of the notions and tools that we're going to be using. My background fabric is already fused here, and it's cut to size for my stitchable area as well as my stabilizer. So if you have all of that ready, let's begin. The first thing we're going to do, I'm going to move this out of the way just so we have a little bit more room, is we're going to follow along on the pattern. Again, you're going to notice on your pattern here that the color is going to be different for each block. That is done intentionally so that you can follow along, and it's just sort of a reminder of where we're at. I'm going to grab the first step. Does not have a number. The numbers are allocated on your machine for machine steps. So if it doesn't have a number, that means we do it. It's an action step for us. We are going to hoop our fused fabric PP, which is already here, and I already have it fused behind. And we are going to gather that one layer of heavy tearaway. I'm going to put it inside my hoop, and I love to do this on a flat surface because it just really gives the support without pulling and stretching and torquing your fabric or your stabilizer. So I'm just going to make sure that all my threads are, there's nothing kind of caught behind it or that's going to get stuck between the 2 layers. Oh, there's a little thread right there as I said it. And I'm going to put that right in the center, lay this right on top, and do my best to center it. Now, we are going to be trimming this block, but we want to be careful that it's not crooked in our hoop, right? So you're going to do your best to try to center it with all the way over on the edges. And then you're going to put your hoop, your inner hoop, on the inside. Just by pushing it against the table, against a flat surface, is enough to get the enough stretch that you need. You don't need to pull on the edges here after that. So once you have it nicely seated and inside, you can just tighten up your hoop. Good. And just like that, you are ready to go. Step 1 is the placement stitch, and this is going to be where these 2 top flowers will be placed, so we know where to put our fabrics. Because they're both in the same fabric, there's actually one placement stitch for both of them. You can opt to change your thread color so it matches your pattern, but because it is, or your fabric, but because it is underneath, it is a placement stitch and then just a tack down stitch that will be covered with a generous cover after. I'm going to just use my first thread, and also I'd like you to be able to see it. But if you want to change it here, that is completely an option. So without further ado, let's get started stitching our church hoop 7 block, step number 1. Excellent. So here is that step 1. So just not every machine has the ability to trim the jump stitch. So I've turned mine off here just so that I can kind of help anyone that needs to trim that jump stitch here. So this is where I would just take it out and on a flat surface, just trim the top. And I just want to remind you not to forget to trim the back. But if your machine has that trimmed, then you are not needing to do that trimming step that I just showed you. All right, step number 2 is a tack down stitch, and this uses fabric E. So coming over here, here is my fabric E. I'm going to take that one piece of fabric here. I've already pressed it, and I am going to lay it completely over covering. Now, one thing you want to make sure is that you have a 1/2 inch on both outer sides and on the top and the bottom of each of those flowers. It is the same fabric for that flower, so it just has one piece of fabric, not 2 separate pieces of fabrics. One piece of fabric that covers it over. You can either washi tape it down on the corners or just on your flat surface, really press it, and you can go ahead and stitch out that step 2. Again, there is no thread call out here because it is going to get covered. So it is up to you if you want to match your spool, your top spool to this, or just leave it. I'm just going to leave it because it is going to have a very generous cover stitch on it. Okay, there it is. Now, just a reminder that our tack down stitches at Riley Blake Designs have 2 just offset stitch lines, and that is for the reason as we want you to be able and feel comfortable trimming as close to the first one or the outer one as possible. And then you don't have to worry, because if the accident happens where you trimmed it, you still have that second one that's just slightly pulled back or inside the shape, and both of them will get covered. So again, if you don't have that jump stitch that trims, I would trim that away. And then what I'd like to do for trimming, and now these are not a square shape, so you're going to need to be able to move around, is take your curved applique scissors and lower that apex of the curve down along so your arm is just slightly lifted, and you want to have your wrist in a comfortable position. What you want to be careful is that you're not trying to cut in a really awkward position. Instead, change your hoop so that it continues to move as you're trimming, and you're going to get best results. Second tip is that you are holding the fabric. You don't have to pull it hard, but just give it a gentle pull so that you're coming as close as you can. And I'm just going to do along the top of both shapes. So I'm actually going to go around the top, angle through the center, and then come around. And they are kind of curvy, so I'm just taking little tiny snips and cut off the top. So it looks like this. And then I'm going to do a quarter turn, and I'm going to do the same thing along this part of the flower. Again, going in and out. Good. Once you have them all trimmed, this is your opportunity to take a closer look and just using the bottom apex edge there and also against a flat surface so you don't puncture your fabric, just kind of going around and clipping any loose threads that you might see. Excellent, looks like that. So this one is actually mimicking the same direction. It's in the hoop the same way that is shown on the picture here. And that was step 2. Then we did our trim step here. So you notice that it was not a number, that was just an action step that we were so excited to, we jumped right into, yay for us. And then we moved right on to step 3. Step 3 is the placement of the steeple of the church. So I'm going to put this back in the machine. Again, no thread call out is necessary here. It's going to get covered up with fabric, and we're going to stitch out where we're going to place our next fabric. Okay, so we have the steeple on the front of the church already done, and we're not going to worry too much yet about maybe what's happening with this shape and why it looks just a little interesting and not quite right, but I'm going to show you why in the coming steps, so stay tuned. It's really exciting and it's just going to come together magically. So we are on step 4, not skipping ahead, and we are going to grab our OO fabric. So coming back to the fabric I already pre-cut, this is my OO fabric, and I am going to do the same thing that I've been doing and placing it on top. So I want to make sure I have a good 1/2 inch at the top, another good 1/2 inch at the bottom, and then the same thing, a 1/2 inch on either side. Looks like I've got it right where I need it to be. You're welcome to tape it into a spot if you want. And we're going to run the machine as this tack down with, again, you can watch for this time, the 2 rounds of stitching that are going to happen. All right, it's time to follow the scissors, and it says here trim step. So again, we're going to follow that same technique that we did, flat table, not trying to trim inside of the machine, and changing, and don't be afraid to change this multiple times because we do have some angled pieces here. I'm actually going to start on the angle piece, coming up along here, and then just carefully use the tip to get into that inner corner. Then I'm going to turn it and continue along that steeple. Good. And take some of those threads, and we've got a couple of loose threads that are in here, so I'm just going to trim those around, catch them all, and then again send them away. Good. Oh, it's starting to get fun. I just love doing the applique first. It kind of really builds this great foundation and base. And then we get to have a lot of fun with all of the thread changes and watching that magic happen. Moving on to the placement stitch, you might be like, what is this placement stitch for? Well, it's going to be for a stitch and flip. We did a stitch and flip last block in 6, but it was slightly different because both pieces had the same whole line going across. This one's different because it's one shape and then a different shape. So this is why we are doing it in 2 steps. We are going to stitch out step 5, and it's really just so you know where to place the edge of your next fabric. So let's go ahead, again, no color is needed here, and stitch out step 5. All right, so it's stitched. You can see it here right on the very outside edge of the church steeple. On step number 6, we are going to do, this is our stitch and flip, right sides together image, we are going to take our last applique fabric here, which is fabric T, and we are going to place the fabric right sides together. You are aligning this with that line. So again, you want to make sure you have that 1/2 inch over top and 1/2 inch underneath. It is actually going to stitch inside of that, and it's going to stitch a nice strong seam line here that we're going to flip to a second. You might have been wondering, I'm just going to pull this back, why this had a little jog and then up. This is actually just like if you were traditionally piecing this, where your seam will come. So that's actually happening, done all for you in the hoop. Aligning up this edge with that stitch and flip line, covering it up and making sure that you have that 1/2 inch over on top of both sides. We are ready to stitch out that number 6 stitch and flip line. And again, the color choice is up to you. If you change it, no call out is needed. So you can see here that seam line is a triple stitch, and there is my underlay, and there's basically going to be my seam allowance. If I pull this down, this is aligning exactly where that little jog in the church steeple happened. And what we're going to do is pull and flip this over. So you're going to take this piece of fabric and flip it over here. And you can either finger press this here or taking the seam roller and just give it a nice good press so it really flattens it out. And you are welcome again to tape and secure this piece down, and we are going to tack it down in a second. So you can see there's an action step. This action step is actually folding it over, pressing it down, taping it down if you want to, and number 7 going right into step 7 here, which is that tack down. So again, our 2-line stitching at Riley Blake, our tack down stitch to make the second part of this church house. All right, you did it. We have our last applique fabric on this church block. Now it is time to do our trim step and trim it away here. Again, you're going to pull, and we do have that folded seam, so it's going to be like a little bit more fabric on both ends, double the fabric that you're trimming through. So again, just positioning your applique scissors and giving a nice firm but not aggressive pull on the fabric. And just taking a look that everything has been trimmed and is ready for next steps. It's so cute and coming together already. Isn't it adorable? All right, so following right along, now we have our very first thread color, which happens to be thread color 8 on step number 8. Just love it when it works out like that. Okay, so this is a detail stitch, and we are going to make those stems come together right beside the church block. So if you haven't already, make sure you put your thread number 8, which is a green thread, into your machine and press start on step number 8. So now we don't need to do anything else here. We don't need to take the hoop out of the machine. Nothing needs to be trimmed. So we can move right along to the last step on this page 30, which is thread number 11 on step number 9. This is our detail stitch, but we're also covering all of that raw edge along the flowers. I'm really excited to see how this stitches out because it's really going to give depth to those flowers and really give it that wow factor. Plus, this is a lovely strong color, so I just can't wait to stitch it out. Let's get going and switch this out. That was a satisfying stitch out, wasn't it? So it not only did that cover stitch, but this is why it's called a detail stitch. It did some detail inside to really give depth to the petals and flowers. That was a really fun stitch out. All right, we finished our first page of the church. We are moving on to page 2, which is page 31, here on to step number 10. So on step number 10, we have a cover stitch. And this cover stitch is in a complementary color to the background fabric, and it is using thread number 18. This is a fill stitch because it's not only doing the cover of the building, but it's also going to do the church door. And so you're going to notice that in your image here. So it's doing a cover stitch and a fill stitch. Step number 10, we're checking our machine, is step number 10, and we have thread number 18. So no trimming is necessary here because everything ran into the next. Don't worry about the running coming down because it's going to get covered in future steps. So the door is so beautiful, isn't it? I just love how that edging stitch kind of came around and pulled all that design. That's really mimicking Lori's beautiful fabrics. That's anchored it all together around the edge. So fun to see stitch out. Next up, we're moving on to step number 11, and that is a cover stitch. So it's just your basic cover stitch. Don't worry again that it's not covering the entire church. Other things are going to come into place, but we are using the next thread, which is thread 3 for step 11. Oh, that cover stitch is truly a luxurious stitch. I just love how that turned out, and the sheen is just really popping up with that color as well. So beautiful. All right, moving to step 12. This one is, this color is a little different brown than we have been using the 12 here. So just make sure you're grabbing your 15 brown for this fill stitch. It is the step as well as it's starting on the sawtooth star that's rotated at the top. So you're going to want to grab your thread number 15 for your step number 12 on here. Now, again, I'm just going to reiterate, if you have any issues with your tension on your bobbin, if you're not sure how to make that happen, you can always use the darker colors. You can always switch your bobbin for a darker color or a matching bobbin on your darker colors, and that will help alleviate any of that. Otherwise, let's go ahead and switch out our threads for thread 15. Isn't this just so incredible how the stitching can be made to actually look like steps coming up to the church door? I am just swooning over this. Wow, so beautiful. So I just want to remind anyone that doesn't have that trim on their jump stitch to trim their jump stitch, and to take this opportunity to just trim any stitches that are either jump or just long tails at the back here, just to keep your back of your project nice and tidy. I just love taking an opportunity every once in a while to keep it clean. It's going to help when we pull our stabilizer off, and it just helps when you are stitching other colors over top as well. Oh, it's so exciting. All right. The next stitch out that we are doing, the next step is going into step 13. This is using our number 1 thread color here, and it is a fill stitch. It's going to be made to look like one of these fabrics right here. And we're going to go ahead and stitch out step 13 with thread number 1 right here. No need to pull that out of your machine. We are moving right on to step 14, doing a thread color change to thread 20. This is a detail stitch. So it is going to be the bird's beak and legs. And don't worry, he's not floating in the sky. We'll find out what happens to him in a minute. And it does have a running stitch underneath, just so that you are aware. Come on ahead and pull it out only if you need to trim your jump stitch. If you don't, you can just enjoy admiring it with me here. And we've also got the base of our flower stand or pot there starting as well too. Don't forget to trim out anything on the back. Okay, the next 2 stitches are both dark stitches. So we have the fill stitch in actually 2 different types of fill that is going to give the bird the illusion of offset with the body and the wing, as well as giving it the illusion that there's 2 different fabrics inside there that are all out of thread. So that is going to be with this thread number 2, which is like a dark navy. But then you're also going to be doing right after that the fill stitch for the church roof in your really dark brown. And so again, if you are having any issues with your tension or you want to change to a darker bobbin thread, now would be your time for the next 2 steps. But don't forget after here, after step 16, to turn it back to your light bobbin thread. And if you're having no problems with tension, then you can just keep this in the hoop and switch your thread color and watch the magic happen. All right, and we are going to switch our threads to thread number 12 for the next fill stitch. This is going to be the roof of the church block, and we are going to, again, if you need a dark bobbin thread, that you switch it ahead of time, but otherwise, if your tension's all working great for you, let's get this stitching. Wow, that plaid roof is just really setting off the whole block. It is so strong and beautiful. How exciting. I just took this out again to like ooh and ah over the stitching, but also again to remind those that need to trim that jump stitch and anything on the back to do that as well. If you have changed your bobbin to a dark bobbin, now is the time to bring it back to your light color bobbin. But our next couple of stitches are really fun to kind of watch, and they're quick stitches. So this next one that we are going to be working on is step number 17. We're going to switch to our 7th thread, which is the lighter of the 2 greens. And I really love how these leaves are not only filled, but watch how the edges are finished around each of the leaves. It really gives them a lot of depth and texture, and I love that there's 2 greens, so it really feels like it's like new life growing out of beside the church here. All right, moving to the next step, which is thread number 8 for step 18. All you need to do is just switch out your top thread, and you can watch the next 2 sets of leaves stitch out just as beautifully as the first 2 did. Wow, isn't it getting gorgeous? Those leaves, they're just something. I am so happy that the last stitch is this number 5 because this is where everything comes to life. This is where the center of the flowers come to life, where the windows in the church come to life, and where the flower is anchored on its little vase as well. So this is going to be a really fun stitch to kind of pull this whole project together. It is a fill stitch and it is using thread number 5 on step number 19. Oh my goodness, it is so beautiful. It's just breathtaking. All of the details are just so special, all of the textures, and I'm hoping you're really just enjoying all of the special thought and detail and the fun stitching this out. Now, I have taken it out only because I wanted to remind those that need to trim all those jump stitches to trim them now. And it's not a bad idea, even if you have your jump stitch trimmer on your machine, to take it out of the hoop and just clean up the back of your project. The last step we're going to be doing here is our crosshairs, which is a very important step, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But before we do, it's actually really helpful if you clean up this at the back, anything that you have, because we're going to be tearing off the tearaway stabilizer, and it just kind of helps clean up your project. All right, so as long as they're just trimmed down and nothing's going to get caught, we can show you it one more time and then go ahead. If you want to change your bottom and top thread, it will be easier to see on your crosshair. So I'm going to leave that up to you if you want to take a moment and change both the bottom and the top. Otherwise, I'm going to leave mine as it is, and I'm going to stitch out step number 20. All right, let's work through these finishing steps together. So the first one is to remove the design from the hoop. So you can just gently release your hoop and take your design out of your hoop. I just like to give it a little hand smooth flat on the table just to kind of relax everything. All right, next we're going to do is that careful tear away of the stabilizer. So this is where you'll be thankful that you did trim all of those threads out. And we're just doing the tearaway stabilizer when you're not trying to peel off this fusible stabilizer on the back of the fabric. And I just support the design with one hand while I come around the perimeter of the design with the other hand. You don't have to worry too much at this early stage of getting too deep. Once you get enough in your hand that it starts to feel bulky, just tear it straight away. And just like we did for trimming the applique, we're going to rotate the design. Next, we have a little bit to go through the inside, and I'm going to use, like I normally do, 2 different tools. This is the Quilty Hemostat here, and it's really great for getting into skinny places. It has a blunt edge, and it can get into really skinny places and kind of help you just get them started and pull it up. So you can really pull it in and get there. I always find it really useful between leaves on these designs like this. Also in between here on the petals, I find it really gets into those tight spots. And because it has a blunt edge, it doesn't really like tear, it doesn't tear anything except for the paper. Then I love to use the little bluebird stiletto and get inside all of the designs. I feel like it's a really easy to kind of get started. It has a sharp point, but not sharp enough that it's going to hurt your fabrics. And I just kind of get it started in there. And then I give it a little, I can even use that to help me kind of get under and lift it up as I pull. All right, once you have that all pulled out, now it is time to press. So I'm going to bring my pressing mat here along with my Jill Lily pressing mat. You can just use one layer or two layers of it on your design. And it's so flush and it's so wonderful because we've done all of this great dimensional stitching in all of these places. And we don't want to flatten it out or reduce that sheen by putting hot iron on it. So I like to place it face down on that Jill Lily pad, pressing mat, and just use a warm iron with no steam on it to just hold down on the design. Lift up and lower it down again. And you just want to kind of work through the whole design without pulling or stretching on anything. All right, and excellent. Good job. All right, so I'm just going to move that out of the way, and we are almost there. One of my favorite parts is trimming this block up. So we can see where the crosshairs go, and you're going to take your Cute Cuts ruler and match it with the crosshairs. I just want to reiterate again, at the bottom of every single block that requires trimming, it says trim the machine embroidery block here to what size you need. So it's 6 by 10 stitchable area, which is what I am doing. We'll need a 6.5 by 6.5, 8.5 by 8.5 is the 8 by 12, and a 10.5 by 10.5 is the 9 by 14. So I'm going to go ahead here and take this trim it ruler and use those crosshairs to line up exactly on my crosshairs design. Now you can see how actually on mine, let me just see. Yeah, you can see it's actually like a little slightly turned, but that's okay. We have lots of extra and we want the block is actually going to be straight. That just must mean that I must have put this in just slightly turned in there, and we have enough there for some forgiveness. So thank goodness for that. All right, so I'm going to place that in there. I'm just going to take my finger and make sure along the seam allowance that none of my design has accidentally been caught. Everything is nice and flat in there. And what I'm going to do is just trim it all away, again on two sides and on the other side, the top. And then I'm going to carefully turn it. Make sure my crosshairs are still aligned and my seam allowance is still correct. And I'm going to do 2 more times, trim and trim. All right. The last thing we're going to do before we can put our block aside is take this over from the back, and using our seam ripper, we are going to just pull just the bobbin thread. This is where if you changed your bobbin thread to a different brighter color or darker color, you would be able to see it really well. But I'm also just I know exactly where it is, and I'm also able to just carefully pull those threads. Once you pull enough, you don't have to touch every one, but enough of the back bobbin threads on your crosshairs, all you need to do is flip over your design, get a hold of it, and look how easy all of that just pulls out. It's just pulling out on all the spots, and the bobbin thread has come out as well. All right, and let's brush that off. Here you have it, your block 7 of your church block of the Prim stitch along. Oh my goodness, it is so adorable and cute. Good job, everyone. The last thing I want you to do before we close off for today is to take your label and place it on the back. And as always, I ask that you just get into a good habit of pinning the name of your block to your block so that it's just easy and simple when we go to do our setting and layout of the block. So let's have some fun and see all the blocks that we have stitched out here at the end. And we are so grateful to be stitching with you for the Prim Stitch Along. This is the Church Hoop 7 block. Please come and share your blocks on social media. Tag us at Riley Blake Designs or at RBD and M.E. Come on over to our Facebook group where we have dedicated a whole Facebook group, RBD and M.E, to Riley Blake Designs Machine Embroidery. Let's grab the rest of our blocks and let's celebrate all that we have stitched out already together in the Prim Stitch Along this season. And now we are already on block 7. Thanks so much for being here, and until next time, I hope you have so much fun stitching.